Herman. Welcome to the Body and Soul Shop. Today I've got a very special guest, a very special friend of mine, and we're going to tell you a little bit of history about this car. I love doing cars with history. It's one of my favorite things to do. So without any further ado, here's Tray Batey and his 67 Coronet.
My brother got this car in '77, and my dad traded a cow for it, and he brought it home, and it was supposed to be my car because my dad was tired of my brother and I driving all of his pickup trucks. So my dad brings this thing home. It had a 318 two-barrel in it, and I took it out in the street and it wouldn't even peel one tire, and so I brought it back to the house and I said, I don't want it. And my 15-year-old brother said, I'll take it. So it wound up being my brother's car, and he didn't have a license. Fast forward 3 or 4 years, and it's got a 440 in it, 3 carburetors, you know, different gears, and it's pretty quick by then. We keep playing with it. Turned out to be a lot of fun. But my brother was bound for medical school, and he got sick of transmission fluid running into his ears every weekend. One day he was sick of it and said, I'll trade you that car for your dirt bike. And so I probably acquired the car from my brother around 1979 or 80, and it's been here ever since. So this car was about 10 years old when we got it. The Coronet line had a base model called a Deluxe, and the Deluxe would have been a post car and 2-door or 4-door. This is the 440 model, which doesn't have anything to do with the cubic inch. It's a body design, and this car would have had a bench seat, automatic on the column, several engine options. This one had the 318 two-barrel in it, and you could probably get a 383 if you wanted, or a 6-cylinder. This car now is decorated as a Coronet RT. That's another story. My brother and I were at a junkyard in Springfield in the 70s, and we'd never seen a Coronet RT. We were up there getting parts, and there were 2 or 3 of these Coronet RTs in this junkyard. We just, you know, took the emblems off and put them on here, and now that's kind of frowned on, but we were teenagers, and I hate to take all that stuff off, but I don't try to pass it off as a true Coronet RT. Okay, so now the car's mine, and by this time I had a Roadrunner and another GTX, but this car always had a lot more money sunk in it. I had more money in the motor and everything else, so it kind of became a Friday, Saturday night street racer type thing. Drove it on weekends and, you know, around Hendersonville, and mostly just racing other kids on the street, and it was a lot of fun. We never tried to do anything with it as far as making the paint pretty or, you know, anything like that. It always stayed indoors. It had a cheap paint job on it, which was adequate. But when Chrysler finally re-released these HEMI engine blocks around 98 or 99, it suddenly became apparent that you could actually own a Generation 2 HEMI once again. You know, they're really hard to find parts for because they were all used up, especially the blocks, and you'd hardly ever even see one. And when they re-released this block, I decided that I really wanted to put a HEMI in here and take the 446 barrel out, and so I started gathering parts. And so as the motor was coming along, it really looked nice, and I realized one day that when I put the motor down in this car, it was not really going to be a good fit. The car needed some love. It needed a good paint job. And so I started shopping around, and that's how I met Paul. And I didn't know Paul, but he was working at Williams Body Shop, and I'd been told that Williams did good work if you could afford it. And I'd had a friend or two in high school that they would work on their cars all summer long, sanding on them, and then they put a $200 paint job on them, and then they were just upset, and they'd do it all again the next year. And so when I started shopping paint jobs, I went, I'm never doing that. I'm going to find someone that does a good job, and I don't care what it costs. And I made a deal with Williams and took the car over so they could look at it, and that's how I met Paul for the first time.
So when I got it in, I stripped it all down to the bare metal. It was a super solid car. I think there was only, maybe one rust spot or something in one of the fenders that about the size of a quarter. So what an amazing car. It was just, you know, really super solid. The other cool thing about this car is, believe it or not, that's the original vinyl top on this thing. I remember Tray telling me when I did it, he said that hasn't had a hose pipe. To us northerners, it's a garden hose, but down here it's a hose pipe to it in like a long time, since he was 16 years old or something like that. So that's the original vinyl top, which I think is just awesome. This vinyl top hasn't had a hose pipe on it since Tray was a kid. So That's the original top. It's amazing. There's not even any blisters where the lead seam is at on this thing. So there's probably like 3 coats of base black on this thing and probably 3 or 4 coats of clear, wet sand and buff. I spent a lot of time blocking, and this thing is straight. So now I'm going to have Trey give you a walkabout on this car.
Yeah, what we have here is a reproduction Chrysler cast iron block, what Chrysler called a Siamese bore block. So it does not have water passages between the cylinders. They offered this block fully wet, and then this Siamese version. It's got water passages that run front to back, but there's no water between the cylinders, and that allows you to go all the way up to a 4.560 bore with this block. It's a 4.5-inch bore. It's got a 4.5-inch stroke, which comes out to 572 cubic inches. It's got Indy cylinder heads, which have raised intake ports, and that also, the raised intake ports raises the intake manifold and everything up really high, so it's really hard to kind of cram everything under the hood without putting a big hole in it, but you know, you do what you got to do. It has a Ray Barton oiling system with a Milodon swinging pickup in the pan, so it's got two feeder lines coming off of a aluminum oil pan, and the pickup swings inside the bottom of the pan. So when you hit the brakes, the pickup swings toward the front wheels. When you hit the accelerator, the pickup swings toward the back. So that way you never uncover your oil pickup. It also has a Canton AccuSump on it, and that way I can turn the oil pressure on and off. I can turn the oil pressure on before I start the engine, so the engine's already has oil to the valve springs and the rockers before I ever hit the key, and that's really handy for something that sits like this car does. You can just see the 3-quart reservoir there. The bucket seats are actually out of a genuine 67 Coronet RT. This car came with bench. The speedometer, the dash, is also out of a Coronet RT, as well as the door panels. It was hilarious. It had JCPenney slotted aluminum wheels on it. It was jacked up 3 feet in the air with air shocks. It had big Mr. Gasket orange traction bars on it, and we had white side pipes coming out at a 45-degree angle. We thought we were cool. And of course, we had all of our sponsors in the window. You know, like Hijackers, STP, Pennzoil, all that was right here. So it was a high school special. And it just wobbled going down the road. And I don't have a single picture of it like that. I really wish I did. The wheels are American Racing torque thrusts. These are reproductions. They're not from the 60s like the ones people try to find at swap meets, but these are the reproductions. And I've always loved the way these wheels look on these mid-60s cars. The fronts are 4.5, the rears are 10-inch, they're 15s. It has Mickey Thompson tires on it. It has been mini-tugged, so the wheel wells have been extended on the inner wheelhouse over to the frame rails, but the frame rails are still in the standard location. The fuel tank, I moved that into the trunk back in the 80s because these cars share the location of the fuel tank and the spare tire well all in one area. This is one of the things that bugs me about my car, and Paul didn't do this, so I can't blame him. When I extended the wheelhouses on this car, I just used what I had handy, which was sheet metal, and cut it myself and shaped it. But I wish we had bought inner wheel tubs and just extended them in the center. So you can see this sharp edge. This is all my work. If we had just bought a new inner wheelhouse and put a strip in it, it would have really looked a lot better. So now I'm showing you all the faults. It has a Holley electric fuel pump on it with dash 8 line, and like I said, it's got 4-inch exhaust on it. The bumper guards were an option on these cars, and these came on this car. Yeah, the way I understand it, this car's got them front and rear, but I've seen some cars that only had them on the front and some only had them on the back. This is a Coronet RT tail panel. It's not a reproduction. This came out of a junkyard back in the 70s, and it's still in really good shape. It was amazing when you went into a salvage yard back then what you could still find. This car's had a lot of hood scoops on it over the years. Like I said, this car originally had a 318 in it, and no matter what we did to the 318, you could still shut the hood. But when it eventually had a 440 in it with a 6-pack, I was using an A12 breather system, which doesn't have a drop, and the hood wouldn't shut. So it's had several extensions of this opening in the hood. When this cross-rammed Hemi came together, I knew I was going to be struggling to get this all to fit. and I really wanted to use a 67 type scoop to kind of keep the DNA of the car correct. But with these raised port cylinder heads, it raises everything up about an inch, and it's really tight. So this is actually a 1969 HEMI Dart scoop, and it just barely does clear. So this is a fiberglass scoop, and I used fiberglass kitty hair to bond it in, and then of course used the old trick of a piece of wood with some sandpaper to kind of keep the, you know, round dowel, if you will, to sand it, blend it in.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching, and I just want to really thank Tray. He's been a great friend, and just really enjoyed working with him. Done motorcycles, all kinds of stuff with him. So anyway, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
I really appreciate the opportunity to share my car and talk about something that I'm passionate about, and it's been wonderful. Thanks.
So even after all these years, 25 years later, this thing is in just pristine condition. I love it. It's one of my favorite cars that I ever got to work on. And so I just want to say thanks to Tray for letting us shoot some video on it. And we hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you next week. May God bless you. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.